This story happened many years ago when I was a child. In those days my parents were friends with this other family. This family had two boys, who were close to me in age. Let's call them Sean and Sid for privacy reasons. Sean was a year older than me and Sid was a year younger, and we all went to the same elementary school. My parents used to rent a large beach house in New Jersey with this family. The beach trip was the highlight of the year. We went every year in the second week of September, when the holiday rush had abated. The year I was 8, the owner called my father. Something had come up. Regretfully, he was unable to rent the home to our group this time. We were, of course, very bummed by the news. Sean's dad did some asking around and found a rental through his co-worker. This new rental was not near the beach. That was the biggest strike against it. It was in Shenandoah Valley. What good was a vacation without a beach? But when we arrived in Shenandoah, Sean, Sid, and I fell immediately in love with it. The home was nestled in a clearing. There were plenty of trees to climb, and hiding places for us to play cops and robbers. One room had 4 bunk beds, and that became our room. The property was secluded, our nearest neighbors were a few miles away. Only once, we saw hikers walking the trail that ran behind our house. The adults mostly talked, guzzled beer, and played card games all day. In the evenings, they barbecued and the kids roasted marshmallows in the fire pit. The last evening of our vacation, after dinner, Sid, Sean and I started playing cops and robbers. We were looking forward to it, one last game of cops and robbers in the forest. We each had a flashlight clipped to our waists. Sid was the robber, Sean and I the cops. We gave Sid a bit of a head start to hide himself. He had an annoying habit of jumping out from behind the trees, to scare us. We didn't want to get spooked by a 7-year-old. He hid in the most obvious places. That evening, we looked in the usual spots, but didn't find him. It was getting dark. The sun had already set and the moon was rising, casting a silvery light over the trees. We called his name several times. He didn't respond. We went back looking for him inside the house. No Sid. We started to get scared. One of the rules was that we were to be back in the house by 9 p.m. No excuses. We each had a watch. Sid knew the rules, it was getting close to 9. If our mothers found out Sid wasn't with us, they'd panic. It was up to Sean and me to find him before the adults noticed he was missing. We retraced our steps back to the woods where we had seen him last, calling his name. At one point, Sean stopped. "Wait," he said in a loud whisper. "What?" I asked. "Listen." It sounded like someone was tiptoeing behind us. A rustle of leaves, then a high giggle and some soulful singing. It sounded like a woman. "Sid?" called Sean. "Show yourself. This isn't funny." No answer. We waited for a couple of minutes for Sid to show up. Nothing. We continued searching. "Look," said Sean, pointing in the distance. There, in another clearing, stood a ramshackle home. Its derelict walls looked even more ominous in the moonlight. It was dark and the windows had been smashed in. There were no lights, it didn't look like anyone lived there. "You think he's in there?" I asked Sean. "Possibly," he said, his voice grim. "It looks too scary." We stared at each other, the same thought running through our minds. We lived for thrills like this. The ramshackle home was exactly the sort of place Sid would venture into. Suddenly, there was a loud scream from inside the house. "Come on!" shouted Sean, breaking into a run. "He's in there." We ran to the house and pushed at the door. It was unlocked. It slowly opened, creaking every inch of the way. We shone our flashlights into the house. There was a hallway with rooms on either side of it. We opened the rooms one by one. One had a long table, with 10 or 12 chairs around it. Another had a 4-poster bed and a dusty mirror. We called his name again, but there was no response. Instead, a high-pitched giggle, behind us this time. Then a door swung open, its hinges creaking maniacally. There was a soft whimpering sound coming from inside. Sean ran towards the door, then stopped. Sid. He cried. There in a dusty armchair crouched Sid. He was curled up in a fetal position, fast asleep and whimpering. "Mama, no," he mumbled. "Wake up! Wake up!" Sean said, shaking his brother. Sid sat upright, shielding his eyes from the light. "It's Sean and Dave," said Sean, hugging his brother. Sid was sniffling under Sean's hug. "I can't go with you. It's late, past 9. Mom's probably looking for us," said Sean. "She's alone," Sid said. "She's got no one." "Who's alone?" I asked. "Your mother?" "Not Mommy," said Sid, shaking his head. "Sweet Mama, my real mother." "Stop it," said Sean sharply. "Your real mother is back in the holiday home, worried sick and waiting for you. Sweet Mama gave me cookies and milk, and sang me a lullaby." Sid didn't look like he was joking. "You're too old for lullabies," said Sean. Sid wouldn't budge from his spot. Sean shone his flashlight all around the room. "Look, this house is empty, there's no one here." The shadows danced about the walls, but there was no one else in the room. "See? She was sitting right here, in this armchair." Sid's voice was insistent. "She even gave me a little locket to keep. She was waiting a long time to give it to me." "So okay, she gave you a locket. Where's it then?" said Sean. "It's here." Sid opened the palm of his right hand. It was empty. He started fumbling, feeling through his shorts. "I had it right here. I swear, Sean." Sean pointed his flashlight on the bed, then the end tables. "No milk. No cookies. No nothing. You must have dreamed it." Sid sat there glumly, shaking his head. "We finally convinced him to come back home with us." Not a word to the adults, Sean cautioned his brother, as we approached the house. "Just say we were playing and lost track of time." That's exactly what we told our parents when we reached home. The parents were mad we'd stayed out so late. There was so much packing to do and we hadn't even started. "Sleep now, you can pack in the morning," my mother said. Sid insisted on lying in the same bunk bed with Sean. The three of us fell into an exhausted sleep, the events of the evening forgotten. The next morning, when Sid went to the bathroom, I heard a clink. It was the sound of something metallic hitting the ground. "What's that?" asked Sean. We searched under the beds, and found a little locket. Inside the locket was a sepia-toned picture of a woman, perhaps in her 30s. On the opposite side was a boy. He looked like the spitting image of Sid. "Get rid of it," whispered Sean. "No point spooking everyone." I quickly tossed the locket into the trash before any of the others saw it. The next year we went back to our usual beach vacation. We never went back to the Shenandoah home again. I wonder if Sweet Mama is still in her armchair, humming a lullaby, and waiting for Sid.